Oklahoma got a big win over Missouri. Are they dancing? I think they're dancing. We'll discuss all that coming up here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Again, coming up, we'll discuss Oklahoma's big 12-point win over Mizzou and if they're going to be dancing. But, Jay, what stood out to you the most from John Mateer's meeting with the media?
So I think the first thing was Brent Venables in his introduction about him. He said, and I quote, he's got a competitive maturity to him and competitive toughness. He's consistent. He likes the locker room. He's a football junkie, a gym rat. He blended in and transitioned incredibly well. All I've heard is that everyone has loved John Mateer so far. All I've been hearing is that he's a leader. I've been hearing that people are raving about him. He is the name that is really jumping out. And we'll talk about him more in detail on that. But when he went through his interview process, they asked him about like Heisman, the Heisman Park and all the traditions of Oklahoma. And he was like, yeah, it's cool. I don't really think about it every day or anything like that. The big thing for me is winning games. I just got to win. Some of that stuff comes with winning. But the most important thing right now is to win games. Sold your boy on it. I'm sold. I'll take 2 John Mateers now because you need a guy that's going to be focused on that stuff. Like there is so much glit and glamour when it comes to Oklahoma. It's, just Oklahoma, football in general. And he knows that he's going to have to embrace it. He said it's a great opportunity and it's a blessing. And he talked about just a privilege of being able to wear the crimson and cream and basically be the starting quarterback. He knows that the pressure is going to be heavy on his shoulders, but I love the fact that he's embracing it. He also points out that we got to win games, and that's what's most important.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really stood out to me is when he kind of addressed the idea that he's got swag.
Yeah.
People talk about how he plays with a swagger, things like that, and he just brought it back to, I just play football. I have the ball in my hand every play. I get the opportunity to do something with it. That camera's on me all the time. So I guess I have swag. Some people will say I have toughness. I just feel like I have an obligation to give everything I have for my teammates. That was the one right there that sold me. It's like, I'm going to give it all. And it's not just all in a game. It's all on the practice field. It's all in the extra workouts. And that's the thing he also discussed is like, the excitement that people had to go do extra stuff away from the workouts, away from the film room, away from the practice field, going and get the extra work in. I think that's showing you, okay, they're ready to rally behind this guy as QB1.
Yeah, and that the players really love him. And it sounds like they adore him and enjoy him just as a person. And he's gravitated. A lot of players have gravitated to him. You can see it in him doing all the, the PR, I guess you could call it, going to all the games and sitting in front row, being at gymnastics, women basketball, men's. Like he's doing like the PR congressman, laps. He's going everywhere. But I don't think he's doing it just because he's trying to, make it look like it's all publicity. I think he enjoys being a part of it. I mean, he comes from Washington State where they do a lot of stuff like that. Same thing down there at Little Elm. You can tell that that's the type of guy he is, that, they all support each other and they support the sports of the school. And granted, what else did you do in Pullman? If you want me to be absolutely honest, there's a lot going on up there in Pullman, Washington, no shade to y'all, but I'm just saying, what else are you doing besides driving to Idaho to, I don't know what you can do in Idaho either. But I digress.
You just do a lot of hiking. It's beautiful out there. If you haven't gone up to the skinny part of Idaho, it's
good fantastic stuff. Good mountain stuff. Good mountain climb. I love it. Yeah. Love it. It's potatoes up there too, right? Got a whole bunch of potatoes. That's what I'm talking about. So anyway, Mateer gives us he gives off that aura, that swagger, that moxie that everyone's excited about. And so, he talked about that. And then, some of the other stuff, he just really talked about, being excited to be here. We talked about this, I think we talked about this last episode, but just the fact that they had that video that came out and they asked the players about their favorite jerseys or whatnot. And everybody talked about like the icy whites, the crimson and all of that. But the fact that he went off the rail and was like, you know what? I like the wood grain. The wood grain is my favorite. How old is that jersey? And that was some years ago. That shows you that he wasn't lying when he said that he's a fan of Oklahoma. He always wanted to play at Oklahoma. That's always a dream of his or whatnot. He's now living that. And I think that he's not going to take that for granted. He's going to show up and show out.
Yeah, and Jim Nagy also spoke with the media on Wednesday as well. And I think some of what he had to say is going to be intriguing, not just for this year, but really more so for the future of the program, because much of what he's been brought in to do is player evaluation. And the thing that really stood out the most and stuck out was when he talked about, I'm not going to be just throwing every single guy at the coaches. I'm going to be bringing players to the coaches that are going to be fits for the program and that they need to see.
They're going to be working together.
Yeah.
As a team, as a connection. And I love hearing that. One thing, somebody asked me yesterday, one question I got was, how soon do we think we'll see Nagy's imprint and his effect on the roster? And you want me to be honest, John? Spring portal. I think you might see some of Jim Nagy there in the spring portal as he's evaluating the roster, understanding what we have, understanding what we need, and they start making some, going after some players. I truly believe that spring portal, you may see Nagy's effect. You may see him go get a diamond in the rough that nobody thought about, because that's kind of the thing I think about with adding Nagy to this staff with Brent Venables and them is he's going to have he has so many connections with G5s and FCS coaches, agents, and P4s that can tell them, hey, this kid here is going to be special, needs a good home. You guys can turn him into a monster. He'll be able to see that. Plus, he said one other thing, too, which, is kind of like a running joke right now. He prefers to be in the dark watching tape, in a dark room watching tape. I mean, yes, yeah, pause, I guess. But for the most part, that means that he thoroughly enjoys watching film and watching and evaluating players. He even went in and talked about the hierarchy and how they would potentially be set up, additional scouts that should have NFL experience to be able to help evaluate these players. And John, just as you said, his goal he's not going to just throw people down their throats, right? After these players, you got to take them. It's going to be a collaboration of, does this player make sense for Oklahoma and the SEC? And I think that that's probably what we've been needing, because now Brent Venables can focus on football and focus on evaluating talent and not to be too concerned about NIL.
Yeah, being able to take some of the business aspects off of the coach's plate, I think is going to help. And I mean, that's the part that the coaches are least comfortable with in the modern era of college football, is the NIL part of this, the rev sharing part of this. So now Brent Venables doesn't have to worry about that. He can just go coach football. He can develop his defense. He can develop the culture aspect for what he wants his program to look like. And he can let Jim Nagy do all the other stuff, and his assistant GMs, or whatever their titles are going to be, negotiating those rev share and NIL deals through the collectives and making it all work. And then this is another really good quote. We're going to be a traits-driven organization, traits and instincts and makeup. So looking for guys that have great athleticism, are good football players, and are the right kind of people. I mean, not so complicated.
Nope. Not so complicated at all. They're going to go for guys that make sense for this organization. I love hearing that. That gives me hope. That gives me a reason to be patient, because as they completely reevaluate top to bottom and focus on what makes the most sense, I think we're going to go out there and get players that's going to be good. I don't think we're going to go bargain shopping at all. I think we're going to go after the talent that makes the most sense for Oklahoma and playing in the SEC, which means we're going to go for good players.
Well, and on that note, one thing we forgot to mention from Brent Venables was the stat he shared that 1 in 4 players at the NFL scouting combine in Indianapolis this past week were either a group of 4 or FCS player, or a group of 4 FCS player transferred to a group of 5, or sorry, a power 4
P4.
program.
Yeah.
So they started out at a lower level, a la Keontae Lewis, Javonte Gibson, Kennesaw State guys. And then they emerged to be Power 4 players. Quite intriguing there, Jay. Hey,
Very.
Another thing that's intriguing, the Oklahoma Sooners might have punched their ticket to the big dance with a big win over Mizzou. Let's discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooner.